Thank you for tuning in to this special episode of Movie Geeks United. Released in theaters on September 25th, 2009, a little movie titled Paranormal Activity quickly became one of the most successful horror phenomenons in modern cinematic history. Now, on the occasion of the film's 10th anniversary, we're proud to present the following brand new interview with lead actress Katie Featherston, where we discuss the initial audition that would ultimately change the course of her life, the unusual process of filming an improvised movie, and the runaway success of the film and its subsequent sequels. Following our conversation with Katie, you'll hear a replay of our 2009 interview with writer-director Oren Peli, which was conducted during the week of the film's initial release.
Does it feel like 10 years?
No, no, it doesn't feel like 10 years at all. I guess maybe because it's only been a few years since the last one that it still feels sort of in the world to me. And I guess I should say, in some ways, it feels like it was the first one was a lifetime ago because it was a whole different part of my life, a different chapter of my life. But in other ways, it feels like it was yesterday. It feels crazy to think that 10 years ago. Yeah. It's just sort of unreal. Sort of unreal to me.
So tell me, before we get into how this opportunity came into your life, tell me a little bit about your training. And I'm curious if improvisation was a big part of that training that you had early on.
You know, I went to college. I went to SMU and studied theater there. And truthfully, I didn't have that much improv training there. I think I took maybe one class. And the good thing about that one improv class, it was taught by this guy named Dan Day. And it wasn't about being funny. In fact, if we were funny, he kind of would get on to us a little bit. The class was very much about just being present in the moment and saying yes. And if that led to something sad or disturbing or dramatic or hard, then great. And if it didn't, then that was okay too. And I think that class was really helpful when it came to sort of being open to things and being able to sort of be present in the moment. And certainly the work I've done, there's a studio I go to called the Brandon Garcia Braun Studio, and the Meisner work and the scene work we do there is definitely in the vein of improv, only in the sense of just being present in the moment, being able to say yes, listening, knowing how you feel, that kind of stuff. But I didn't come from that. I came from a more sort of traditional kind of in your head method of acting. But I'm glad that, you know, the training that I had prepared me in whatever ways it could for LA. And it's one of those things you never stop learning. I feel like I'm a different actor now than I was 10 years ago. And in another 10 years, I'll be different than I am now, which is what makes it so fun.
Yeah. And that fascinates me because, I mean, you're saying that you still take classes. I mean, you've had a film career for the past 10 years. Can you feel yourself evolving as an actor?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and if I didn't, I think I would be bored and find something else to do, you know? That's one of the really fun parts of acting is that as I grow, and I think this probably goes for everyone, but I'll speak for myself, as I grow as a human being, my work as an actor grows because I'm more emotionally available in certain areas. I have different blocks or hopefully fewer blocks than I had when I was younger. I have different hang-ups or hopefully fewer hang-ups. And so the work comes more easily and sort of the scope of what I'm able to do grows. And, you know, it's like anything. The more experience you have in something, the better hopefully that you get at it. And also it's a muscle. You've got to keep working the muscle, you know, just because you have a career, like the class that I'm in right now, there are working actors in it who get off a TV show and then they come back to class because they're always working that muscle and because they care so much about the sort of craft of it. And that's exciting to be around. So, I definitely have to keep growing and changing.
I mean, I don't mean to be too technical, crafty about things, but you know that's pretty much the kind of show that this is. But acting, the craft of acting, really fascinates me, and I'm wondering when you feel yourself evolving and maturing as an actor through experience and through further study and etc. does that parallel with your growth as a person in general?
Yes, for me it does. Because and I think there's probably a million ways to look at it, and there's no one right way for sure. But from my experience, my human problems, my life problems, my hang-ups that I have in my day-to-day interaction with other people and in kind of me as a person, those are the issues that come up in my work. So if I have a hard time accessing like vulnerability or sexuality or humor or something, if I'm afraid I'm not funny in life, then you're going to see that in my work. If I don't know how to own my sexuality in life, then you're going to see that in my work. If I can't be vulnerable with another person and cry and be open, then that's going to come up in my work because it's going to be required of me, and I'm not going to be able to do it as a person, and therefore it's going to be harder to find in whatever character I'm playing, versus having all of those things open in me and flowing, so that when I have this other person that I'm playing, it's just like, oh yeah, I can get to that. I have that like inside of me. I know where it is, and I can take it and use it and shift it in the ways that I need to serve the story, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does, and it's very relevant too, because I've seen the work that you've directed. And I feel like that work is also speaking to a need to grow, and especially the short web series that you did, the Solace for the Unloved, which I think is so great, and it's kind of about for me it's about the battle between insecurity and acceptance. It felt.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, thank you for watching that. I was written by this really talented gal named Emily Habeck, and we had been talking a long time about it, and then she was like, would you want to be in it? And I was like, yeah, can I direct it? And so we worked on it together, and that was really a really fun project to do, and fun to sort of flex those muscles and kind of be more creatively in control of something that still was relatively small, so I felt like I could play and try things and know that if it didn't end up working, that everything was going to be okay. But I think for the most part, it really did. And so I was excited to take a crack at it.
Let's get to Paranormal Activity.
Sure.
So when you first answered the call for this audition, the improvisation aspect of it was not a hindrance. It didn't intimidate you at all.
No, I mean, there wasn't really time for it to intimidate me. I mean, the way the audition went was, I remember it was in this tiny theater in North Hollywood, and I was in the kind of waiting area, and these women would go in with their headshots, and I mean 30, 45 seconds later, they would come out with their headshots looking very irritated and frustrated, and they'd just sort of leave. And I kept thinking, like, what is going on in that room? And then I went in, and there was it wasn't a normal audition where, you give your headshot and say, oh, hi, and they ask if you have any questions, and you sit down and blah, blah, blah. It was just immediate. The guy was like, oh, hi, I'm Oren. And I was like, I'm Katie. And he said, why is your house haunted? And I thought, oh, this is what we're doing, And so I just went with it and started, telling the story about this kind of fictionalized story about why I thought my house was haunted and what I was feeling about it, and why I thought it was important to tell him, and that was it. And that was exactly the way the callbacks were. And so it was actually really freeing, because it sort of felt like, well, I'm going to come up with what I come up with, and it's not going to be wrong because I'm the one coming up with it. And he'll either like it or he won't. It'll like resonate for what they need, or it won't. So there were like no parameters, and that sort of felt freeing in a way. So I loved it. I love improvising. I love creating on the spot. I think it's really exciting. Fills me up.
So obviously, Oren Peli, he had an outline. He knew the situations and the direction he wanted this film to go. But when you say you improvised, did you kind of work out how those situations would play before the cameras rolled?
Yes and no. I mean, some things, for instance, we didn't have an ending to the movie, and we didn't have a lot of the filler scenes or the sort of smaller moments within the larger arc, but he definitely knew the big scares he wanted. He knew kind of the direction the film was going to go in, like you said. And the way we kind of worked is we would talk about what the scene was, and then we would film it, and it would usually be, I don't know, something atrocious like 7 minutes or 9 minutes long, right? Well, that's way too long. And so we would take it and we go, okay, well, what worked in that 9-minute take? This worked, that didn't work. Let's do it again, but let's do it in 5 minutes. So then Mika and I would do the scene again in 5 minutes. And then we go, okay, great. Let's do it again, but let's do it in 2.5 minutes. And then finally we would get more condensed, like to the heart of the matter kind of version of that long scene. And then usually the shorter version was what we ended up using. And so we kind of worked it out as we went, which is easier for us because there was, it was only a few people in a house working around the clock. It wasn't, big crews or light setups or anything like that. So there was a real kind of freedom to the way we made that first movie, which I think is unusual and was really fun to create in.
Yeah, and it was shot in a week, I understand, and the atmosphere that you're describing, it feels very experimental. Did you have did it feel like you guys were reaching something? Did you know what the potential of this project as you were doing it?
It's always a hard question to answer. No, I never was like, you know what, we're making a movie that I think is going to spawn a franchise. Like, never in my wildest dreams did that even enter into my mind. And I think part of the reason is because we weren't really thinking, when we were making the movie at least, we weren't really thinking about what would come after in the specifics. We just wanted to make a movie that we would really like and that we thought people would like, and we really cared about it, and we were so full of like inspiration and creativity, and it was so fun that's what we were focused on. And it wasn't until later that we thought, oh wow, okay, cool, we've actually got something here, and well, let's see what happens. So we were really in the moment of creating that. We were never thinking like, oh, let's make a movie that'll hit it big in Hollywood. We were just having fun and working from a really like pure place, and it doesn't really get better than that. I always say that everything that came after was really icing on the cake, and that the actual making the movie was the biggest gift. As cheesy as that sounds, yeah, it's really true. Mika and Oren are really their best.
Well, but then again, I mean, wasn't there like 2 or 3 years in between you finishing that initial shoot and it actually getting kind of picked up?
Yeah, there was 3 years. So we filmed it my very first year in California. I graduated college, moved to LA, and then we started filming right around my birthday in October in 2006. And then it came out in October of 2009. So there were 3 long years in between. And, it's in some ways a lot happened in those 3 years for sure. And in other ways, we never knew what would happen. I mean, it was I think Oren, would kind of edit the movie, and we'd watch cuts of it, and we'd give notes, and we'd talk about it. I mean, there was a whole year of that. And then we got into Screamfest, and then Jason came on board, and all of these things were really exciting. But at any moment, that could have been it. It was like, okay, great, we got into a film festival. Amazing. Like, how amazing is that? That's my second year in LA, and a movie's in a film festival. This is so great, or so it's like every step of the process I enjoyed, but never knew if there would be anything after it. And then kind of there was 3 years of that, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, your movie's going to be out in theaters all across America next weekend. And I was like, what? So it was quite the whirlwind.
I'm wondering about the first time you saw it with an audience, and
yeah,
were you surprised by the power of it?
Well, I mean, that was a special night. I think the first time was at Screamfest, the first festival that we were accepted into, and my mom flew up for it, and I had friends there, and that was the first time I'd seen myself in a movie on a big screen ever, and the first time that we'd seen this movie, and it was really overwhelming. That might not be the right word. It was really like special. It felt so appreciative that people were excited about it, and really surprised. I mean, we believed in the movie, but then to watch people react to it in the moment is a whole different thing. And I remember thinking like, oh wow, these people are really into this. Oh man, like, oh wow, this is exciting. You know, it was just, and it wasn't exciting like, oh, it's going to be something big and crazy. It just was exciting like, oh, we made something, and they really like it. You know, I mean, that's a special feeling. So, yeah, I remember that very, very, very fondly.
And the thing that I always loved about the franchise, but especially that first one, I like movies that, especially when you're talking about a horror film, that make the audience an active participant in the experience. So just the nature of the subject, audiences are looking at every corner of the screen. I mean, they're moving their eyes, they're trying to detect something, and that's so exciting when the audience is truly part of the movie.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think you're right, and I think, you know, for me, I like all different kinds of movies and all different kinds of scary movies, but my most favorite are usually the ones that allow me to fill in the blanks more than give me all the answers on the screen. And so, because there's nothing for me scarier than what I can come up with in my own imagination. And so I think that our movie did that well, in that there really isn't a ton that's happening. I mean, there are scary things, but there's a lot of silence for the mind to fill up on its own. And so I think that it really caters for sort of fear individually for each person that's watching. And then, of course, they go home and they're in their house, and everybody who saw that movie probably lives in a house. And so you bring it home with you, which is also, I think, really fun. If you like to hear.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And of course, you were in most the other Paranormal Activity films, and it's interesting because obviously Paranormal Activity, the original, was such a huge hit, so of course they're going to try to produce more. But you have a bigger budget, but they want to maintain the same kind of aesthetic. But how different did those sets feel compared to the original?
Well, I mean, really different. However, I think they were not nearly as different as they could have been. And I say that because, you know, we went from having, you know, 3 or 4 people in a house with one camera, no lights, no craft service, no crew. Like, you know, it was just us. It'd be like if you went home tonight and filmed a movie in your house. Like, that's what we were doing. To Paramount, you know, who's this huge mega studio trying to make an indie film. So it's like we had to adjust to that. And then also Paramount was rightfully so, and I really honor them for this, trying to stay in the vein of what we had already done. So they pared everything down. The crew was smaller. Things were kind of more naturalistic, but there was still crew around, and, you know, call times and set lists and, you know, lights everywhere and craft services. And, you know, it was certainly like, it was like, oh, this is a movie set. Like, okay, I get it now. But I think, and it took, you know, some time to like work out those kinks and to get into the flow of things, but everybody was excited, and, everybody showed up ready to play. And so it was for the most part really fun adjustments, I think, especially on the second one, just kind of figuring it out as we went. I think everybody wanted the sequels to work and to be good. And so, we all, you know, worked together. It was fun.
I like the sequels. I'm a fan of all of them, pretty much.
Cool. Awesome.
I just rewatched all of them last week, so
wow,
I freaked myself out a little bit. Yeah. I hear from like people that appear on TV and film. They say that TV, their fans, it's a different kind of relationship they have with their fans because they feel like they know them. As opposed to the distance maybe you feel between you and a movie screen. But when you're in a movie that is built as this kind of found footage thing, and you're playing a character with the same name as your own, I'm wondering what those fan interactions are like.
Yeah, I think it's probably closer to the TV experience. I mean, I think fans do feel like they know me. I think so many, especially young girls, desperately wish Mika and I were really in love. You know, it's like they wish they really want us to like be, which is so funny to Mika and I, because we're just like, we're pals. Like I love him dearly, but we've never been anything more than friends. But there is sort of this feeling of they want it to be real in some way. And you know, if I could go back and tell my young 23-year-old self, like, hey, this movie is going to be pretty big, maybe think about using a fake name, that would have been something I would have said, because it would have been the same movie. It was just sort of like, we were like, well, we're improvising, might as well use our real first names and make it easier. And then we just, that was the extent of the conversation. So I think had we, you know, had character names that were different than our actual names, that maybe there'd be a little more distance, but certainly people do feel like they know me, or that maybe I am somehow more paranormally like inclined in life than I actually am. Like, I love all that stuff; it's fun, but
yeah.
But I don't, you know, I don't come from that, or you know, like I'm pretty cheerful, pretty light. You know, my office is like bright turquoise, and there's, you know, white shutters. Like, it's very, you know, there's nothing much scary about me in real life.
Do you feel that you in the industry, because of that, the reality of the series and the character named Katie, I mean, years ago I was talking to the filmmakers of Blair Witch, and they said what they were faced with in the industry was this attitude that, well, you guys didn't really do anything. You didn't direct anything. They just thought it kind of happened.
I think that is certainly, I mean, look, that exists. In fact, a few years ago, maybe, gosh, I don't know, it's probably like 5 years ago, I wrote a sketch that I filmed, and it's on the internet somewhere. I think it's on Funny or Die or something. But it was me going into an audition, and the casting director being like, "Wow, Katie, it's so great to meet you. Congratulations on your documentary. So you want to be an actress now? Have you done any acting?" And it was sort of like, you know, a play on the idea that we didn't actually act. It just kind of, we were just being ourselves and got lucky, and, you know. And so, yeah, that exists, sure. But that's not something I'm going to, like, spend a lot of time on, mostly because why? Like, there's so much opportunity, and there's been so many blessings for me with this franchise. I mean, I could talk to you for an hour and still not cover all of them. But one of them is that it's given me, you know, access to these awesome fans who are excited about what I do and care, and I love that. And it's given me some space to be able to figure out how I want to create on my own, which I also really love. And in fact, and I remember on the first movie, you know, because we all kind of did different things in addition to like acting or directing. Like we all were contributing to kind of how we would shoot the scene, and we were of course improvising the dialogue, but like, you know, I would make set lists, or, you know, like shot lists for the day, because I was very type A and needed a list and wanted to know what we were working from, and the guys didn't really need that, but I did. And so I would be very organized and have it all written up, and we all just sort of like contributed and collaborated in ways that I think as an actor you don't always get to do. And I remember thinking, I will never have this much fun again until I'm making my own work. And so, you know, that was a blessing that this project kind of gave me. A, that awareness, and B, the space to figure that out and do it.
My last question for you is, you know, I don't expect you to give away state secrets or anything, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. There's been rumblings of another Paranormal Activity, possibly a remake. Have you heard the same, and are you in any way involved? Can you confirm?
I cannot. This is what I do know. I knew that my social media blew up, and my lawyer emailed me the Deadline article, and all of a sudden I was like, what? Why is there a picture of Paranormal Activity 1 on the cover of Deadline in this article, you know? And so I heard about it when everybody else did, and I have no idea any specifics or what stage they're in or what direction they're going, and you know, will always have deep love for these movies, and always open to being in them if they want me, and no matter what, I will be like the biggest cheerleader ever possible. And we'll be excited to see what happens. But yeah, I'm at this point, I'm kind of figuring it out along with everybody else. So
we're both crazy about this movie, and I cannot imagine how it feels for you already having achieved such success with it, and you're about to receive a lot more with this wide release on Friday. How does this feel? It has to be overwhelming for you.
It's beyond overwhelming. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I can imagine. But you've come from, if I read correctly, the software business prior to making this movie. But had movies always been a dream for you? Had directing been a goal for you all along?
Well, I mean, I always, everyone loves movies, but I really loved movies, and I was like a total movie geek, and I loved watching movies, and I loved watching them and kind of trying to analyze how they're made and what I could have done better or different. And I always dreamed about doing something to do with movies, but I didn't think I would have the time or the patience to go through the regular route of going to film school and working your way up. But after movies like Blair Witch and Open Water came out and showed that there's another way to do it, just buy a video camera and start shooting, and if it turns out well enough, then maybe you can sort of like bypass the whole system. And I figured, well, why not give it a shot?
Well, you did that. I see Open Water, I see Blair Witch in there, I see a lot of things in there actually, Cloverfield and Cannibal Holocaust as well, the way it's shot. I saw this on Saturday, and I got to tell you something, Oren. The second half of the movie is some of the scariest stuff I've seen.
Cool.
And I got to tell you, the audience, you had some people just like jumping out of their seats.
Cool.
I mean, myself included. I always say, nothing scares me. A couple of moments, especially the movement of a certain blanket in one scene. Yeah, you got a lot of scares out of that.
This is what fascinates me, though, because when you're working on a movie, can you tell as you're making it that it's working?
When you're making it, I mean, you have to some degree, trust your intuition and your instincts and to think, if that turns out well, that could be really creepy and effective. But you don't really know until you have the whole thing edited together and you show it to, to friends or test audiences. Until then, you may think but you need to have the people's confirmation.
Yeah. And when was that first screening where you knew that you had gold?
Well, I did a lot of screenings of really, really early cuts that weren't even finished, and I could see that there was probably something there. And then when the movie was coming together, I did a screening at my friend's Alex's house with people that I didn't know, because you always want to have people that are, more objective, not just friends. And there was a couple that was watching the movie, and the guy was like this big, football-built type of guy. And during the whole movie, he was like holding on to his girlfriend, going like, "Oh shit, oh shit."
Yeah, no, it's that kind of movie.
Yeah, it's an oh shit movie.
Yeah, so that's when I started suspecting, and I had a lot of people telling me earlier on, this is the scariest movie I've ever seen, and I'm not sure, maybe they were like just trying to be nice, and
No, we're not trying to be nice. No, and if I can ask, this is based on a true story?
No, I'm not aware of any. I could say it's inspired by me thinking about the concept of using a video camera at night, because there were weird things happening in my house. So I thought I didn't actually go ahead and set up a video camera, but I thought if someone did set up a video camera and it's caught some bizarre stuff happening at night while people are asleep, they're not even aware of it, that's pretty damn creepy.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. It's very creepy.
Now, I know that Blair Witch was one of the films that inspired you to embark on this, and we've talked to the Blair Witch guys, and they're fantastic. But their movie was met with tremendous success at the beginning, and then there seemed to be, and they admitted to this, a kind of backlash about the kind of gimmick behind it. Were you worried about too much emphasis being placed on the gimmick of the video camera and the static nature of it?
I mean, there's nothing I could do about whether or not I'm worried about it or not. That's what the movie is, and most people seem to really embrace it. I mean, it's really only because of the fans that the movie is where it is now. If it weren't for them liking the movie and demanding it, and basically forcing the studio to keep expanding it, we wouldn't even be talking now.
Right.
So I think that's the premise of the movie, and it is what it is. And a lot of people love it, and a few people may not dig it. But what can you do?
Well, I love it, and I think the gimmick is a really a horrible term for it. It's what the film is.
I'm not really right. I'm not really considering it a gimmick. It's just a different way of telling a story.
But even so, I know that there was talk of a possible remake, and then they decided that nothing at all was wrong with the original, so why remake it? But do you think this film would have been as effective with a bigger budget and bigger kind of name actors?
It's hard to tell, and there was no specific decision about whether it's going to be name actors or not. I think it's just that the studio really loved the movie and they wanted to do something with it. But you can imagine that they would be really nervous about committing to releasing a movie, and how do you market a movie that basically looks like cheap home video. And so for a while we weren't really sure what was going to happen until we did a test screening, and the executives were in the theater with just real recruited audience, and when they saw how well the original film plays, then they decided pretty much on the spot, you know what, let's just forget the whole remake thing.
Yeah. And this movie is incredibly suspenseful. I mean, it's what your imagination fills in more than anything else. As a filmmaker, how do you achieve that?
To me, as a viewer, I always found that the anticipation is what is worse than actually something happening. Like waiting to get the Novocaine shot at the dentist, that's worse than the actual shot.
Right.
So I know that to me in a movie, just waiting for something to happen is the worst thing. And if it doesn't happen, if you expect something to happen and it doesn't happen when you expect it or at the same time or the right thing, then your anxiety just keeps building and building and building. And that's what a lot of people find to be kind of intolerable in the movie. That there are many sequences when you don't get the jump scare release of adrenaline, and you just have to keep taking it into the next night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know you've probably been asked about this nonstop since it came out, but obviously Mr. Spielberg was a big fan of your film and has really shepherded the process of getting it out there. What have your conversations with Mr. Spielberg been like? That must be a dream for you.
Yeah, I haven't had any direct contact with him, but I did hear that he saw the movie and was terrified by it and really loved it, and that was one of the reasons that the whole remake idea was forgotten, because he just said, you know what, let's just release this one, because it was very effective on him.
Yeah. And have you attended screenings of the film since it's been in release?
Yeah, I snuck into a few theaters here and there.
and the response has been exactly what you had hoped for, I would imagine?
Yeah, it's always played very well, and it's extremely rewarding to see how people enjoy the movie and laugh at the right times and scream at the right times and moan and groan when things get too stressful. So it's a lot of fun.